Welcome back. Today, we take a peek into the life of Charles Cullen, a former nurse and one of the most prolific serial killers in the history of the United States healthcare system. If you thought hospitals were scary enough already, get ready to be terrified. This is the true story about the man who has come to be known as the Angel of Death. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I'm your host, Greenman, and this is the Murder Encyclopedia. Before Charles Cullen became a man who took advantage of his position to terminate the lives of helpless patients in a twisted desire to free them from their pain, he was a little boy from West Orange, New Jersey, born in February of 1960. He was the youngest of 8 children in a deeply religious Catholic family. His father, Meme Cullen, was a bus driver, and his mother, Florence Cullen, stayed at home to raise her children. 2 of his siblings would later die in adulthood. According to Charles Cullen, his father abused him as a child and at some point even raped him. Luckily for him, Cullen's father died when he was an infant, freeing him from further abuse, but the damage had already been done. Cullen described his upbringing as nothing short of horrible. He attempted suicide quite a lot. His first attempt at ending his life was at the age of 9 when he drank chemicals from his chemistry set. This was just the start of life dedicated to constantly trying to die. Cullen was so dedicated to trying to kill himself, in fact, that he would go on to attempt suicide 20 more times. In one of these attempts, Cullen said he tried to end his miserable childhood by taking a pair of scissors and jabbing them into his head. As a result, he was rushed to the hospital emergency department where the staff ran him in to have immediate surgery. Even years later, when he began working as a nurse, he would fantasize about stealing drugs from the hospital and using them to end his life. Cullen lived a life dedicated to searching for death, but he couldn't find it. His mother, on the other hand, died in an automobile accident when he was 17. Her death devastated him so much that he had to drop out of high school and enlist in the US Navy in 1978. 10 years down the line, after landing his first nursing job at St. Barnabas Medical Center in New Jersey, Cullen found himself surrounded by sick people who needed his help to get well. But all he saw was a sinister opportunity to play God with people's lives. Reflecting on his time at St. Barnabas, Cullen remarked that a lot of the patients were suffering and that he couldn't deal with the reality he was witnessing every day. He stated, "I worked on a burn unit, so there was a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and I didn't cope with it as well as I thought I would." Cullen's first known murder was on June 11, 1988. He administered a lethal overdose of lidocaine to a municipal county judge named John W. Yango, who had been admitted to St. Barnabas Medical Center after an allergic reaction to a blood-thinning drug. In Cullen's twisted mind, he was simply putting an end to the agony of a man who was already on the verge of dying. With this mindset, Cullen would proceed to kill 11 more patients in the same manner by overdosing them intravenously with insulin. He was practically poisoning these patients with heavy doses of drugs that they didn't need. In 1992, when hospital authorities began to suspect foul play, Cullen quit his job. He would eventually begin working again as a nurse in February 1992 at the Warren Hospital, Phillipsburg, New Jersey. Again, he began piling bodies. He murdered 3 elderly women by overdosing them with the heart medication digoxin. His last victim there referred to him as the sneaky male nurse, who injected her while she slept. Unfortunately, no one took the sick old woman seriously. In December of 1993, Cullen quit from Warren Hospital to seek better employment elsewhere, or rather, to continue his deranged killing spree. Cullen's next point of call was at the Hunter Medical Center, Rarity Township, New Jersey. He worked in the intensive care unit for a brief period of 3 years. In 1994, Cullen became a licensed nurse in Pennsylvania. From 1994 to 1995, Cullen claimed that he didn't kill any of the patients at the hospital, and the absence of any hospital records could not disprove his claim. However, Cullen admitted to killing 5 patients in 1996 through the use of digoxin. He was so prolific a killer, but managed to stay under the radar thanks to drugs like that aiding Cullen in his desire to grant the perfect death. There was also the fact that back then there was no work records or means to assess someone's performance at a previous workplace, and so Cullen had no trouble calling it quits whenever he felt the walls were closing in on him. So basically, no matter how bad things got, there was always another hospital out there ready to accept him. It didn't help that there was an ongoing staff shortage at a lot of hospitals. On February 1998, Cullen was employed at Liberty Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He attended to patients who needed ventilators to breathe. But just 8 months later, he was fired from Liberty after he was found entering a patient's room with syringes in his hands. It was revealed that the patient had broken an arm while trying to resist Cullen injecting him. But as usual, another hospital had an opening, and this time it was St. Luke's. During his time at St. Luke's in January 11, 2000, Charles Cullen tried to commit suicide again. He lit a charcoal grill in his bathtub and hoped to succumb to carbon monoxide poisoning. Unfortunately, his neighbors weren't the mind-your-own-business sort, and they called the fire department once they saw smoke. Cullen was taken to the hospital and a psychiatric facility, but returned home the following day. As much as Cullen was incredibly sane, he was also remarkably clever, as he would continue murdering patients at St. Luke's without detection. It wasn't until a coworker accidentally found vials of unused medications in a disposal bin that an investigation was opened. Cullen was found guilty of sneaking away medication, and once again the police weren't involved. He was simply fired, free to find new patients to prey on. But soon, Cullen's murderous actions would catch up with him. 7 of Cullen's former coworkers had grown very suspicious of the trail of death he left in his path, and decided to file a report to the Lehigh County District Attorney. It reported that Cullen had been using drugs to kill patients, and he had been present for nearly 2/3 of the deaths at the hospital. The investigators never delved into his past, and the case tragically died out after 9 months due to a lack of evidence. In September 2002, Charles Cullen got a job as a nurse in Somerset Medical Center in Somerset, New Jersey. He worked in the critical care unit. At Somerset, he would proceed to murder 8 patients. His weapon of choice was dioxin and insulin. The executive director of the New Jersey Poison Information and Education System warned Somerset Medical Center officials in July 2003 that at least 4 of the suspicious overdoses indicated the possibility that an employee was killing patients. The hospital was complacent in the response until October that year. By then, Cullen had killed 5 more patients and attempted a 6th. Somerset Medical Center was eventually penalized for not reporting a non-fatal insulin overdose in August, and it was discovered that it was Cullen who administered it. The hospital still hesitated in their response to the situation despite the red flag. However, when Cullen's last victim died of a low blood sugar in October, Somerset of course didn't call the police, but fired him instead. At this stage, his coworker, Amy Lauren, who had been his friend and confidant at work from the start, was also suspicious of him. She had earlier on justified some of the deaths on the grounds that there had been some genuine mix-up on Cullen's part, or the sick patients had just taken a turn for the worse. More of a case of an innocent man being in the wrong place at the wrong time. According to Lauren, at first she thought they were trying to pin something on her friend, like narcotics theft. It didn't occur to me that there was something more sinister going on. Her suspicion of Cullen's actions reached climax when the hospital's computer system showed that he had been checking restricted files of patients. Not only that, the computerized drug dispensing cabinets showed that he had been requesting medications which hadn't been prescribed for the patients. Searching deeper, Lauren found curious combinations of drugs that Cullen had consistently ordered. The list was long, sometimes half a dozen in a night. Lauren knew these drugs to be more commonly used in a cardiac unit, and Cullen was working in the critical care unit. His orders emptied the supply drawers, and he would personally order for a restock of the pharmacy. These acts were all too suspicious. After detectives showed her Cullen's last activities in 4 different hospitals, Lauren's reality was shattered. She couldn't believe that her reality had been so skewed, that she was close friends with a monster. An investigation was started, and the authorities, using Lauren as an informant, discovered Cullen's employment history as well as connections to previous deaths. Lauren agreed to putting on a wire to try and get him to confess to the crimes. Both of them would agree to meet at a restaurant. At this point, journalists and the media in general knew that Cullen was suspected of hurting people at the hospital. Lauren sat at the same table with her former colleague as he proudly pointed to the reports of his suspicion in the papers. It almost seemed like he was proud of his actions and felt like a celebrity. Lauren said to him, "I'm not stupid. I know that you're guilty. Let's go to the police station together. I'll stay right with you. I care so deeply about you." She said at that moment, Charles Cullen became someone else. He was smug, but there was emptiness there that I had never seen before. After years of getting away with murder, the Angel of Death was finally arrested on December 14, 2003, on one count of murder and one count of attempted murder. Over the next several months, he would admit to numerous other murders and attempted murders as part of a plea deal not to get the death penalty. He promised cooperation with the authorities and pleaded guilty to even more deaths. Cullen is currently serving 18 life sentences. He is being held at New Jersey State Prison in Trenton, New Jersey. Looking back at Charles Cullen's mode of operation, it involved the administration of lethal drug overdoses to his patients, mainly through medications such as insulin, digoxin, and other substances that would lead to respiratory or cardiac arrest. He specifically targeted the critically ill patients and those with minor health issues, often acting on a whim or a sense of mercy for patients he believed were suffering. To Cullen, he was some sort of savior, possibly the Angel of Death. Due to the nature of his crimes in the hospital setting, Cullen's murders initially went unnoticed or were attributed to natural causes, and he managed to escape detection for many years. He was responsible for numerous deaths during his career, and the precise number of his victims might never be fully known, although many put this number of murders at approximately 400 victims. Charles Cullen's killing spree is a terribly dark chapter in the history of healthcare in the United States. To a large extent, Cullen saw himself as a mercy killer. His actions, to him, were meant to give rest to patients who were, in his opinion, drastically ill. As he told investigators, he administered the drug overdoses to put very sick patients out of their misery. What are your thoughts on Charles Cullen? Do you believe his actions were due to compassion, insanity, or just pure sadistic tendencies? Leave your comments below. If you enjoyed watching, please like, share, and subscribe for more content here at the Murder Encyclopedia.